Good evening, folks. Welcome along. 33 years in 31 days. Day 29. Not much longer to go. Day 29, looking at 2018. If you watched last night, which was really long, and if you did, I'm impressed. But if you watched last night, you'll know that last night I said there's a blank space for 2018. There's a blank space for 2018 and there's a blank space for 2019 at the moment. So I don't know what I'm going to say tomorrow. However, I have come up with something for tonight, but it should be nowhere near as long as yesterday's, where I really went off on one about social media and awards and the like. But Ruth, welcome along. Mercedes and Andrea, good to have you. Peter as well on Periscope. Good evening, and 20 odd other people as well. So 2018. If you've been following some of these broadcasts, you'll know that I went to the control room from custody. That's when the big name change thing occurred, and I went from the custody sergeant to Sergeant TCS. And I went on a block, and I went on C block in the control room, and they were absolutely brilliant. The whole bunch of them just welcomed me with open arms, and I really felt like a square peg in a square hole. I felt at home with them immediately. When I went off on my corporate comms secondment for 8 months, I returned, but the chief inspector, decided he was going to put me on another team. There's not a lot I can do about that. So I said, well, if that's what I thought, you were putting me back where it's supposed to be, but if you're not and you can't and you won't, well, then there's nothing I can do about it. But can we have a deal that the minute that I can go back to C block, you will? He had to be reminded, but he did put me back on C block. And going back to C block was like going home. It was brilliant. They're such a fantastic, and I know each sergeant in the control room speaks very much the same about their own team, because all the teams are excellent. But C block in the control room was always my home, and to go back was fantastic. We all look after one another. We're a fantastic team of people. They're massively efficient. When the force brought in the new incident handling system that was coming in early because of license and issues, that the one that we'd got was going to run out, but the new one wasn't ready really to go live, but they had to make it go live. So it was full of faults, and still is, and full of problems. We were the group that were chosen to actually be on duty on nights when it happened, and I was there, my team were there, and we were chosen because we just get on. We might whinge and complain and stuff, but ultimately we get on and do it, and we did it, and we implemented the new system, and then at 7 o'clock we left and said, it's yours now. But my team are brilliant, and the reason that I'm talking about my team in such high esteem is because there was an event in 2018 that was special for me, and there he is. I was the big 5-0. The 5-0 in the 5-0, if you like, if you get my drift. But one of the ladies there that cooks breakfast for us on Sunday mornings when we're on earlies and does breakfast for everybody, occasionally just makes cakes and brings them in just for the sake of it. But they made a big fuss of me. It was my 50th birthday. I had cake, I had balloons and cards and all kinds of stuff. And it was just lovely to be spoilt rotten by a bunch of amazing people. And whilst we're on the topic of amazing people, you go through your career, and there are key people throughout your career that you remember. And you remember them because they were a great friend and you had a great working relationship with them, or because they were a bit of a, whatever you want. I can't do any hand signals, can I? That would be rude. But you just don't get on, shall we say, and you remember from that, or you've had a bad experience with somebody and you remember them for that. But talking about excellent people, I've had bosses throughout the years in all the areas that I've worked, I've had some that I thought were brilliant and turned out that I thought, oh, they're a really nice person and all the rest of it, and they've been really helpful with that. And then they've suddenly just turned their back on me, and I'm like, what did I do to deserve that? I've had some that I thought particularly sometimes weren't bothered about me in the slightest, but actually were in a corner fighting for me, which is a nice thing. And there are some who, my sergeant on the roads policing unit was the one that kept shoving me towards promotion and testing me all the time and kicking me up the backside to make sure that I kept studying. So lots of people. But over the years, so many good people that outweigh the numbers of awful ones. James, welcome along as well. Good evening. Just saw you drop in on YouTube. So many good, and the number of good far outweighs the number of bad. But if I ever had to come down to a point and say, who was the best boss that you ever had? There she is. And I have to say, and I'll say it now before I go any further, the best bosses that not all of them, one of them not particularly good at all, but the bulk of the best bosses that I've had whilst I've been throughout the police service have been women. And this was my inspector in the control room during 2008. And she's brilliant. She's brilliant because she's very personal. She gets along with everybody. She takes time to get to know everybody. She was very sympathetic and understanding to the situations that I was in with social media and the way the force was responding to my activity. She was very accommodating in making sure that if I'd got something, I could go. Too many things to list. But by far, head and shoulders, no disrespect to any of the other bosses that I've had that have been brilliant. Last time I put something out about her, on Facebook, just to my private sort of friends and what have you, I got posts from half a dozen ex-inspectors all saying, well, what about me then? But no disrespect to them whatsoever, but she stands head and shoulders above the lot of them. She's now chief inspector. I was, oddly, how my traffic sergeant was kicking me up the pants to become a sergeant. As a sergeant, I was shoving her all the time saying, you get in the chief inspector's process because you've got all the skills this organization needs. She cares about people. And she cares about getting things right, but making sure that we take the people with us, not leaving them behind and saying, I've got this great idea and this great policy and I'm going to shove it in regardless. She says, I've got this idea. How do we bring everybody with us? And she does it and she delivers. She's now chief inspector, just been promoted, dead pleased for her. One of the last things I said to her before on our last meeting, our last chat, is probably a better way. We had a chat a few days before I actually left on my last working day. And I said to her, you've got superintendent written all over you. Get on with it. Make it happen. Take it. It's yours. She's brilliant. So that was sort of in the early part of 2018. I've also had a request at the beginning of 2018 as to whether I'll go and deliver a presentation to another conference. And so I went to her, I went to Janet, and I said, can I do? Yes, you can. No hesitation whatsoever. Easy decision, this one, because it was for the College of Policing and it was for the High Potential Development Scheme, which is officers who come in at PC level are identified as being potential senior officers. So they put them on what we used to call, when I joined the cops, an accelerated promotion scheme. And they go through a process where they get the probation out of the way, and then they very quickly become a sergeant, they very quickly become an inspector, and they go on and on and on and on. For some, it works really well, and there's some great bosses. For others, there's nightmares. If you remember the story of Greater Manchester Police and the senior officer at Greater Manchester Police that did something rather embarrassing with her chest, and there was huge furore on Twitter about the fact that she didn't get disciplined and didn't get sacked and all the rest of it because Mr. Windsor got involved. Whereas if it was one of my colleagues at the lower end, that it had been dismissed without notice, get out, conduct unbecoming, all the rest of it. Very, very odd and suspect decision. Accelerated promotion scheme. Yeah. Doesn't mean that was, but, there's good and bad that go through that scheme. It would be wrong to criticize the scheme because there are some brilliant people that go through it. But as with anything, there's a promotion process to become sergeants, and there's some people get through that you look and think, how on earth are you ever a sergeant? And some people might think that about me, but there are others you go, you're brilliant. And some people are made for sergeant. You sort of think, can you see that person as an inspector? And think, no, because it'll stifle what they do now and their creativity and innovation and brilliance. Anyway, high potential development scheme, College of Policing at Ryton in near Coventry, and I went to deliver a conference there. I think I've got a picture. I have. Where's my thing gone? There I am at the College of Policing at Ryton. One of the people that spoke at that event as well was Chief Constable Giles York, who I think was Sussex at the time. Not quite sure, might be Sussex. But I went down and I spoke to them about social media, about using social media, whether they should be using social media, what were the pitfalls, what were the problems, talked about Don't Stream and Drive and my experience of what had gone on, and then said to them, and if you're thinking about going on social media, don't. And there was this pause, and they all sort of looked at me and he's just spent the last 25 minutes telling us all how wonderful social media is, and now he's telling us not to go on it. And I said to him, just don't go on it. Don't go on it if you're doing it because you think you should, or because everybody's supposed to have a Twitter account now, aren't they? Go on it because you've got a purpose. Go on it because there's a reason why you're doing it. Go because it's something that you want to do. If you don't want to do it and you're not interested in it, don't do it. Find another outlet. But that was the last high potential development scheme course. The whole thing has changed. But I was invited over there by the guy that was leading the course, called Professor Grint. He has a daughter who's a superintendent, I think, with the Metropolitan. But it was an absolute pleasure to go and speak at that. And I got a very lovely comment from Mr. York, both whilst I was there, but also via Twitter. A lovely message from him, just saying, how nice it was to meet me and the Twitter legend that I am. Never really saw myself that way. But that was that. Then we move on towards, it's all in the beginning of the year. We move on to Don't Stream and Drive. March, April time. Don't Stream and Drive campaign has been building up. I will have been building the Thunderclap. I've been doing all sorts of things. And there was something that I did, and it caused a lot of consternation. And that was this. I can put it up there. Oh, make it bigger. There you go. Make me small. That's better. UK police forces supporting Don't Stream and Drive. I got a map. I wanged it into Photoshop. And every time we got a force main corporate account to sign up supporting Don't Stream and Drive or joined the Thunderclap, we coloured the county red. So Police Scotland joined, the PSNI joined, all the Welsh forces joined, Devon and Cornwall were in, North Yorkshire, Northumbria, Cleveland, North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, West Yorkshire, Norfolk, Suffolk, Kent, all these forces joining and getting involved and saying, yeah, we will commit to put some posts out on Don't Swim and Drive Day. Or if nothing else, and we haven't got time to do anything else, we will press a few buttons, click a few things that takes no more than 3 minutes, that signs up to the thunderclap and says, one tweet goes out from us saying, we're supporting Don't Stream and Drive. All they needed to do. The vast bulk of the forces there that are painted in red did much, much more, and were really supportive. And I'm so grateful for all those forces that just got involved. But the white ones are the one. I don't know whether we can zoom in on this. Let me just see if I zoom in on my map picture. Does it zoom in for you? Yeah, it does. Look at that. Clever stuff, isn't it? So as you can see, Staffordshire, who had fallen out with, Staffordshire had fallen out with me because I pulled them to pieces about a Christmas campaign that they'd run on social media the year before, where they'd run videos of officers singing along to Christmas carols whilst they were driving, and then talking between each other about really important messages for Christmas and preventing crime. So the messages were right, but the method of delivery was completely wrong. And you get PCSO driving a car with a colleague, and they're driving, singing a Christmas song and la 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 while the film camera and they're being filmed. And then they say, oh, well, my mother, they got scammed, and you've got to be careful, haven't you? And you've got to check the websites and do everything right. And you think, that bit's important. Why are you singing in the cars? And why are you filming it while you're driving? To prove my point, within no time at all, I'd found somebody else doing carpool karaoke based with a reply to Staffordshire saying, look, we've done it too. And you think, that's the behaviour that you're creating. That's what's happening. Oh, there was a right furore about it. Messages exchanged between professional standards offices and emails and phone calls between MPCC offices and all the rest of it. I got called in to see the head of professional standards, who changed at this point, and was asked, what is it that's going on, and he said, well, I'll tell you what, Neil, he said, we've had a fallout with Staffordshire about something else just recently as well, and to be honest, I agree with you, so don't worry about it. But that was a knock-on effect. Staffordshire fell out with me and wouldn't support anything that I was doing. Metropolitan Police, always massively difficult to get involved in anything. Hertfordshire, just tried, but couldn't get him. And the others, West Mercia, Warwickshire, Gloucestershire, and Avon and Somerset, that patch we just couldn't fill in. The interesting story here, though, with the map was that Avon and Somerset contacted me directly, and they spoke to me about it, and said, so are you force supported because Cheshire's not lit up on the map? And I said, I explained this, I won't go into the full details, but I explained my situation with Cheshire, and they said, well, that makes us nervous because if Cheshire aren't involved, why would we be? And long story, ultimately, they wouldn't get involved. And I suspect they eventually, having spoken to me, spoke to their counterparts in Cheshire, who will have said, oh, well, we don't support it because blah, 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 blah. And on that basis, Avon and Somerset just said, no, we're not getting involved. He said, we'll get media questions and we'll get all sorts of stuff, and they'll be asking us what proactive work we're doing if we're supporting a campaign. I said, I'm asking for one tweet, and you don't even need to do anything on the day. Just click 3 buttons now, 2 months in advance, and it will happen. Couldn't do it. Too hard to do, Trey. So I think sometimes that's what you're up against. And you think, yeah, and they say, well, we'll get phone calls from the press. And you say, well, you're the media office. That's what your job is, taking phone calls from the press. They don't like that. But anyway, that map caused some issues, I can tell you. So that was pretty much it, really. Don't Assume and Drive went ahead. I got pulled in front of professional standards again about the map. And they spoke to me about the map and said, "What is this map?" And I explained, and I said, it wasn't really intended to sort of embarrass anybody. I said it was supposed to be a method of encouraging other forces to get involved. Now, the interesting thing was that professional standards said, well, it's done now, so don't worry about it, but don't do another map, will you, please? So the map thing got binned for 2020, for 2019, should say. But one of the interesting things that came from that map, and I've forgotten what I was going to say now. What was I going to say about that map? Avon Somerset's response, doing the map, don't do it again. It'll come back to me. Anyway, so not much else has gone on really in 2018. I'm happy in the control room. I'm working with a brilliant team, absolutely brilliant people that I finished my career with. And the only thing really in 2018 at that point is that I've got a business interest with the force registered as a police officer. If you want to run a business or be involved in any other work away from the police, well, then it has to be sanctioned and approved by the professional standards. And I'd got a social media advisor stroke consultancy business, self-employed, but I needed to register it with them. And that was registered with them because occasionally I would get work where I would go out and be paid to do it. And it was on my time rather than on job time and all that kind of stuff. But one of the things, and there's a bit of a story to this, because I start looking towards retirement and what am I going to do in retirement? And quite like the idea of not working for the police. Don't want to leave the police. So many cops leave the police and go back again and do something in a civvy role, and it's like, or a police staff role. I'm like, don't really want to do that. What am I going to do? And trying to get a plan together of how it should look and thinking, how am I going to build up my social media stuff? So how do I build that and progress that for it to become a viable sort of earner for me when I leave? Really sure, we'll have to look into it and see what I can come up with. Getting lots of positive comments from people and people saying, when do you retire? We need to keep in touch. We think that's easy said, but much harder to follow through. But one of the things that I had done is that when I was a young lad, I spent, and secondary school, I spent most of my weekends crawling around underneath and around Land Rovers with a friend of mine. And his dad would buy them. We would pull them to bits, renovate them, put them all back together again. His dad would sell it, buy another one, and repeat. That's all we did. We messed about with cars. When I eventually started to drive and I got my own car, I always had a certain amount of pride in my own car, always kept it clean, always kept it tidy, always out with a bit of polish, making sure it was right. And when I was in the police, my police car, particularly when I was in traffic, my traffic car had to be immaculate. Had to be. There was no other way about it. Then my eldest daughter in high school decided that she wanted to go on a trip with a crowd called Camps International. And that involved her going to Borneo for a month. But in order to get there, she had to raise all the money herself. So cake sales, raffles, sponsored walks, whatever, and all that kind of stuff. And I'd said, I am not doing it for you, but I will help you with the stuff that you need to do. So she did lots of things, and we did car boot sales, and we did sponsored walk down the Sandstone Trail from Frodsham to Whitchurch, which is like 36 miles, I think, or 26 miles. 26 miles. We did it over 2 days. But we did all that. We got sponsorship. But the one thing that really, really worked for her was that the village coffee shop has got a space at the front where some cars could pull on. You get about 3 or 4 cars on the front. I made a chat with him and said, if we bring a hose pipe and attach it to the lady next door who said we can use her outside tap, can we wash cars on the front on at weekends, Saturdays or Sundays, or maybe Saturdays and Sundays? Wash cars, might bring some customers in for you, but customers might want the car washing while they're having breakfast and that kind of stuff. Of course you can. It was an absolute gold mine for her. She had her money for Borneo in no time at all. And it opened my eyes to something that was, A, I've always enjoyed looking after cars. But B, there's an awful lot of people that don't really, they want to have they've got a car, they want a car, they like the car to look nice, but they can't stand cleaning it. I quite enjoy that. Maybe I'm weird, but I quite enjoy doing that. So I started to do a little bit more. I was just doing stuff on my cars, and then friends would say, "Oh," and they say, "Well, just bring it around on Sunday. We'll do it. And do you want it waxing? We'll get it polished and waxed while you're here." And I was just doing friends' cars as favours. And you suddenly think, more and more people were saying, "Oh, could you do mine?" You say, "Well, yeah, and just pop it around. It's all right." And you think, you can't do that forever for nothing, can you? You just can't. So, looking towards the future, I registered a business interest with work, an additional one, which was a car detailing business, and said, I'm going to be doing car detailing. Occasionally, there might be some income for me, so I need to register it with you. All approved, rubber stamped. Thank you very much. Off you go, Neil. Carry on. And from that point onwards, I started to develop this car detailing business. And that has grown and grown and grown. And I've had to be really careful. I've never advertised. I've had to be really careful, because if I advertise and get loads of inquiries and then say, well, I can't do you for 3 weeks because I've got a few bookings already, and then all those other days I'm working for the cops. Sorry, you just look rubbish and you're letting people down. So I kept it very close and very tight. I've got a great relationship with a local garage who I had been a customer of theirs for 20 odd years. And they look after me like family. But that was something that I decided to do. And so I've got a Twitter account for the business. It doesn't do a lot. I've got an Instagram account for the business. I put pictures on there and show what I'm doing. And I've got a Facebook page for the business, and I do stuff on there as well. Facebook and Instagram get most of the stuff, rather than Twitter, which is unusual for me because Twitter is my big police thing. But that sort of works, and that's developed, and that's started to grow. And I'll go a little bit ahead with that now, because that has developed, and I've been a sole trader doing that for a while. But last year in September, that went to limited company status. And so now, as I approach retirement, I've got a business interest which is viable, ready to grow, and will supplement anything that I do social media wise as well, along with my pension, of course. So that's about it, really. Set up a business, all the mess about Avon and Somerset and the map and the problems that created, and high potential development scheme presenting to them, and birthday with the best team, with the best boss. Really good year that. Working with those people and with that boss was just a dream all the way along. And the sergeants, I had 2 sergeants working alongside me on the team as well at the time, who were both utterly brilliant as well. So it was just like, slick, brilliant. That is all for today. Tremendous initiative. I got a certificate for taking part. Which initiative, Ruth? Which was that? What did you take part in that you got a certificate for? And James, did you really just quote PSD saying, well, it's done now, so done? Yeah, James, I did. They didn't like the map, and they said, it's done now, so, and there's no huge thing with it. But I know what I was going to say about the map. What I was going to say about the map was that oh God, it's just got. This is. I think it's an age thing. It just went right out of my head again. Oh no, private Facebook group. There's a private, closed, hidden, invisible Facebook group that a lot of the police communications managers and staff watch, contribute, ask questions. Is anybody doing this? Has anybody tried doing this with Twitter? Does anybody know how you do that on Facebook? All that kind of stuff. But it was interesting that the map was getting the thunderclap, right? Thanks, Ruth. The map was getting shared all over the place, and people were picking up the map. So, as an example, someone who lives in Essex was picking up the map and sending a picture of it to Essex police saying, "Come on, Essex, you're still white. Get yourself signed up." So that was one of the things that started to niggle people, because the public were trying to tell the cops what to do, and they don't like that, particularly comms teams. So it started to get shared around a lot like that. And on this Facebook group, I popped into it one day, and there was a message, and somebody puts there, "Does anybody know what this map is and what it's about? Because we're getting sent it all the time, and da-di-da-di-da, this, that, and the other." And you think, well, hang on a minute. Every corporate comms office got a media pack from me that year saying, this is what I'm doing and this is how it's going to be. So if you don't know what Don't Stream and Drive is, you're not reading your emails and the media packs that are sent out to you. What is it? And it's driving us mad and all the rest of it. And somebody replied sarcastically saying, "Oh, blah, blah, it's this, that, and the other." And somebody else replied, "Oh, yeah, well, we think it's all this and blah, blah, blah." And there's all these comments and all the rest of it. And I looked at it and I thought, cheeky, A, rude, B, C, misinformed, don't really understand it. Thinking, I nearly replied and I stopped myself. Don't reply to it, just leave it. And when I went back and looked at it next time, our social media lead in Force had written on there saying, "Those of you who are commenting on here should know that he's a member of our force, but he's also a member of this group and can see all the comments that you're typing." That thread died at that point. But it was a really interesting insight into the minds of some of the people that work within comms teams, that I'm just a cop, so what do I know? We'll leave it at that. Thunderclap Ruth, thank you. Exactly, Ruth. And most forces just went, "Oh yeah, right," And when I saw them sign up, I would send them a message saying, "Thank you so much for joining the Thunderclap. It means an awful lot." And a lot of the time I'd get a reply back saying, "Absolute pleasure. Always great to support something that's helping with road safety, and good luck with it, with everything that you do." But and if you look at the map and how full that map was, let's stick that back on there a minute. If you look at the map and how full that map is, well, then there's a heck of a lot more people showing support and being interested in it, rather than those who are trying to turn their nose up and be objectionable about it. And so I'll take that as a plus, I think. Anyway, have a lovely evening, folks. I hope you're safe. The weekend is upon you. If you're working, stay safe and look after one another. Otherwise, take care. And I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow for 33 years in 31 days, day 30, looking at 2019. I'm going to have to find something to talk about with 2019 now. But take care, folks. Speak to you soon. Good night.